Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is Wander to the Edge. My name is Adam Asher from The Edge of Adventure.
That is your name. I'm Zan from Where Gals Wander. And Adam, look what I can do. Do you know what I'm doing?
Hitchhiking.
I am hitchhiking. You got it.
How are you doing? What is the update on the
elbow
arm and
is
pain? Yeah.
elbow's all healed, so I can do this. I still have that little bone that goes right here on your wrist is still broke off. Still 2 breaks in the wrist, but the hand is healing up. So I'm getting there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're ready to start wandering again. Have you had the chance to get out of the house at all?
Just locally around the neighborhood. So I've watched so much bad TV and read so many books, and yeah, I'm actually looking forward to going back to work. That's the point that I'm at.
Yeah. And okay, last question. How many more weeks are we looking at in the cast?
In the cast, I go back to the surgeon on July 23rd, and that's kind of do we keep her in the cast, put her in a splint, or take it off?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I am so sorry this happened to you. I mean, it has not been easy, I know, but you're getting there one step at a time.
And like I said, I can try the whole hitchhiking thing if I wanted to, because I can do this now. And our guest today is an expert at that.
Yes, she is. In fact, she might be the first to tell us that you have had a bit of a detour.
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. We're going to talk to Claire Ramsdell today from the Detour Effect, and started off with a rock and roll lifestyle and has tried 5 other lifestyles since then. We're going to get to the bottom of all that and hear all about her. And
she's a great person. You're going to enjoy this interview, everybody, right here on our favorite program called
Wander to the Edge.
Yay! I'm so excited to talk to you guys. Thanks for having me.
Oh, we've been looking forward to this. And I have my little, wait, where is it?
You have your
my little pin on. Yes.
I've got mine too.
Yeah. Adam,
high five from afar.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. What is the pin?
So it says the Detour Effect, and the idea behind the pin is I've been sending them out to travelers, road trippers, backpackers, hitchhikers, any kind of traveler that is in our community that we talk to online, a lot of the people that you guys have talked to as well, and just trying to see where they go on their detours, because on my website I talk about where I go all the time, but it's much more interesting to look at as a community where everybody goes, and people have different styles than I do, and so it's turned into sort of like a Flat Stanley kind of thing. I don't know if you remember that from when you were a kid, but
yeah.
People post photos of where they're going with their pins, and sometimes it's a big, like, climbing a mountain type of thing. Other times it's something like a micro adventure, something simple, or something about they had one plan in mind on their trip, and then they ended up kind of deviating and going a different way and doing something cool that they didn't expect. And so it's just been really fun. I feel like I'm kind of living through other people. I can't be on the road all the time, but collectively we are all on the road, either as a mentality or actually physically on the road all the time. So yeah, we're calling it the Pin Pals. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of new. We're seeing where people are going to go with them, and if anybody wants one, they can get one from me. I still have a few left.
Well, Claire, you're well known for your platform, which is called the Detour Effect, and everybody can look it up at the detoureffect.com, look you up on social media. I have a question though. What is a detour?
Well, it has a meaning for me in my life, and then it also has sort of like a general meeting that I think works for everybody. You know, kind of like I was saying a minute ago, a detour is whenever you have one plan in mind, but then you are flexible enough to get off track and sort of follow a different way. And that could be, I don't know, you're on your way to Zion, but then you meet some other people at a hostel that were on their way to Bryce, and they kind of convince you that that's the place to go. And so you decide to abandon what you were going to do and follow them instead, and you end up having a great time. Or it could be a very macro level, changing up your entire lifestyle, which is what I did. I mean, whenever I started the Detour Effect, it was kind of at a crossroads in my life where I abandoned what I had been doing my entire life up to that point, and decided that I was going to start getting more into travel and backpacking and hiking. And that was all because, I didn't expect to do that. I sort of dipped my toes into that type of hobby and then just fell in completely unexpectedly. I loved it so much, and it just changed my entire life. I mean, the whole trajectory of my life. And so for me, that was a detour that never got back on track. So it means a lot of things for different people.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because in the starting point, you actually began where a lot of people want to end up in terms of life goals. You had that rock and roll lifestyle thing going for you. That's all I'm going to say, because I want to hear in your own words sort of what was going on in your life at that time.
Yeah, well, that was kind of my goal for my entire life. I mean, since I was maybe, 14 or 15 or something, I had a radio show, which I think, Adam, you started doing ham radio when you were like 15 as well, weren't you?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
So yeah, that was like pre-podcasting. And I would talk about alternative music, and I grew up in a small town in Southeast Texas where we had some kind of cool swampy garage rock bands that nobody else knew about anywhere else. And I thought that really represented where I came from and that people should hear it. And nobody was really looking at our area of the country. So I got this idea in my head that I wanted to work in the music industry so that I could bring attention to what was going on in a part of the world that nobody pays attention to. I thought those bands had something to say. And so then everything that I did from then on out was all just geared towards that goal. Every hobby that I had, every city that I moved to, every school that I went to, it was all just like, how can I work in the music industry? I did a bunch of internships. My degree was a Bachelor of Science in Music Industry. That's a BS in music industry, which is very accurate. And when I got out of college, I got a really good job at, it was the agency group at the time. It's a talent agency, but then we were bought by UTA, and then my little unit went over to Paradigm. So I got to work at 3 different talent agencies, but it was always with the same boss. And it was awesome because it was a lot of bands that I really loved growing up. And, that's not something that happens a lot of the time when you're first starting out. You have to work in a different genre of music that maybe you're not that interested in, but that's who's hiring at the time. Or, you don't always get to jump right into the stuff that you're interested in. But I think I just vibed really well with the agent that represented the bands that I liked, like the Black Angels and the Black Keys and the Black Lips and the Kills. This is a Kills tattoo that I got before I ever had that job. Father John Misty, just a bunch of bands that I really loved. And I was shocked that one guy was the agent for all of them. I was like, if I got that job, that's crazy. And I think they recognized that we were like-minded and that I genuinely liked those bands. And so somehow I did get that job. And it was really awesome for a few years. I mean, I really loved the people that I worked with, and I loved that I got to feel involved with that music. But, it became sort of a rat race kind of thing, where I don't know if you've seen that movie, The Devil Wears Prada. Sometimes that sort of vibe is in there, not with my boss, but other people that you work with. Just a lot of screaming, and there's stories about this one executive that would throw things at his secretary. And then I think I started to feel like what I was doing didn't matter that much. I love music. I think music matters culturally. It brings people together. It makes your mind open to how people in other cultures and even just other states live. and what their thought processes are like, especially from a lyrical standpoint. So I believe in the power of music still, but being in the industry, it was just a lot of, crap. I don't know if I can curse on here. It was just a lot of like egos and gossipy kind of stuff. And I think I was so rigid in following that one goal for my entire life that once I got that job, I was able to kind of sit back and look around me for the first time and say, what else do I want for my life? I mean, if I take out music, what else is there? What else have I done? And it was nothing really. I mean, all my friends were because of my career. All of my, anywhere that I ever traveled was because of my career, everything, where I lived. And so I was like, well, I don't even have any hobbies. I don't have any experiences outside of this. And everything that I do within the job is to help somebody else have great experiences and to further other people's artistry and to help them create. But I wasn't creating anything. I don't know. There's just a ton of reasons that ultimately I just decided, I think I looked forward at the next 30 years and I thought, if I stay in this job, my day-to-day life is going to be exactly what it is now. 30 years from now, maybe I'll have different artists that I'm working with or have more clout or whatever, but I'll still be waking up to the sound of a jackhammer outside in New York and getting on the subway with the rats and, working at a desk all day long. I think part of maybe why I got into music was thinking it would be adventurous too. You're meeting all different people with different perspectives, but you get there and it's still kind of a cubicle job like anything else. I wasn't really having too many experiences outside of getting to go to a lot of shows, which was great. So yeah, kind of that's a ramble, but there's just so many reasons that I left that job, and it was great and I loved it, but I just started to not align with who I was anymore, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk radio and let's talk Southeast Texas. Okay?
Yeah.
So years ago, back in the day when I would travel and I would drive to Mexico. So from Atlanta, Georgia, I would drive to Mexico, stay for a long period of time, come back. So I got to know kind of that part of Texas. Usually would stay either in the Houston area for like one night, or I did have some friends that lived closer to the Louisiana border. And there, obviously we've already established that radio has always been a big part of my life. And so I remember these things, but there was, how radio will do jingles. They'll take something and it might be something awkward to say or a strange combination of words, and they still send them off to the jingle singers and they get, maybe the legal ID or something for the radio station sung. And so the stations, I remember there was a station in kind of that area between Houston and the Louisiana border. And the jingle, and I won't sing it, so I'm sorry to let everybody down.
That's what I was
I'm
waiting
not going to
for.
sing it. I would sing it off camera, but I'm not going to sing it where it can be recorded. But it said three cities it would name, and they would sing out the following three cities: Beaumont, Port Arthur, Orange.
Oh my gosh, that's the Golden Triangle. Yeah.
And so, but could you imagine them singing Beaumont, Port Arthur, Orange?
There's no rhyming involved in that at all. There's no, I don't know how you'd get a rhythm going.
But it sounded good, and it sounded so good that I still remember it. I could still hear it. But so what part of Texas?
Wait. I still don't understand how that would work to try and say those three cities. I think that you have to demonstrate, Adam, how they were able to put that in one jingle.
You're not feeling it?
I don't get it.
Well, you know what? I'm not feeling it either. So I can't. I won't be singing that. I won't. But
if he ever sings it sometime and he thinks you're not recording, Zan, you need to press some kind of button.
Yeah, that's not my gift, but it was pretty funny to be driving through and to hear Beaumont, Port Arthur, Orange strung together as if it were a lyric to a song. But what part, Clara, what region of Texas was home for you originally?
It was Beaumont. So yeah, It was one of those three. Yeah, there's not a lot in Beaumont. I mean, it's just very flat and mosquito-y. It's hurricane central. You know, we had to evacuate all the time for hurricanes. And but, you know, we did have sort of a style going on there. I mean, I do remember some of the local bands. There's this band called Gonzo Sirens that was cool. There's this band called Hello Chief. And, you know, they would kind of play that circuit and maybe sometimes go to Louisiana. There was a record label in Louisiana called Community Records. And obviously you could always go north and play Austin. And a lot of people moved there ultimately. But yeah, Beaumont, I just remember knowing very early on that I wanted to leave there as quickly as possible. And actually, Janis Joplin is from Port Arthur. I think she's kind of our only claim to fame. And she also got out of there as quickly as she possibly could. There's just not a lot of opportunity. I mean, there's not much to do. There's good people, and you're by Galveston. You can get to the beach pretty quickly. But I think whenever I was getting into music, as much as I liked music itself, I was also really fascinated by, like, you know, bands that come from other cities or other states have a completely different perspective, and they write differently, and they have their own scene that grew up there as a product of whatever the politics are like in that location, whatever the geographical location is in terms of weather, and there's all kinds of things that I found it really strange that you had these little pockets, like in Seattle, for instance, you had all the grunge bands. Why was that? Why did that particular location breed this genre when nobody else was doing that around the country? And, you know, New Jersey had a hardcore scene. Why were all the bands in New Jersey coming up with this same sound around the same time? You know, it has to be something about living in that place. And so it was really fun for me to discover bands growing up. I think it is for everybody. I mean, when you're in middle school and high school, you're discovering all kinds of music and different things. But I was just really fascinated by, you know, I think I was looking at it from like a sort of traveling perspective, honestly, without even realizing it. I was thinking about what it must be like to live in these different places. Because in Texas, there was nothing going on. So, you know.
I love that, though, that connection between, and like if Krista Muscarella was back on the show, we would be talking about the whole sociology piece of this again. But how where you live and, like you said, the weather and the politics influences the music and the culture around it. That's really fascinating. So.
Yeah, it was interesting to me too. And I was excited to maybe bring some of those ideas with me whenever I moved to New York and I was working at these different companies. You know, I wanted people to hear what type of music was happening in Southeast Texas. And, but I also wanted to become familiar with, you know, what it was like to live in the way that those people were living, you know, because I liked the music so much. I thought that there must be some sort of connection. Maybe I would like that city too. Maybe I would like to live the type of lifestyle that those people live, because I really resonate with what they say in their music.
And then you took a completely different turn. You went from rock and roll in New York to hitchhiking to Alaska.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know. I guess whenever I was having all those thoughts about, you know, do I really want to do this for the next however many years? And it was also an unhealthy lifestyle. I mean, we were out every single night, free drink tickets and smoking, and it was just bad lifestyle health-wise. I just started asking myself a lot of questions about what I want my life to be like. And I don't know how I got onto, I started reading Thoreau and, you know, watching all those movies that probably anybody that has gotten into travel has watched, like Into the Wild and those types of things. And I was like, oh, this is something. They're doing something that's real, you know? I mean, the stuff that I would talk about all day long on a day-to-day basis with my colleagues or with artists, it was so abstract. But like the way people who live in a van or people who hitchhike or backpack and travel, they were doing something that to me felt tangible and real, and like they were having real experiences that they were learning about the world. And I don't know at what point that flip happened. When I look back on it now, I'm like, I'm very surprised at myself, because I did care so much about my job and about music for so long. I don't know what happened in my head, but I think I started to hike around New York. You can take the Metro North up to the Appalachian Trail stop. So it takes it's like a 2-hour train ride out of New York to go hiking. Started hiking more. I started just kind of consuming different media, and sort of came out of a haze of just hearing from my own bubble all the time, just from other people in the industry. And finally, when I decided to quit that job, I didn't really know where I was going to go. My cover was that I was going to hike the Appalachian Trail. That's what I told everybody. But I knew I wasn't going to do the whole thing because I wasn't even starting at the top. I was just going to take the Metro North out to that Appalachian Trail stop and hike for however long I felt like. I put all my stuff in my friend's storage, except for my backpack. And I was like, let's just see where I go. Let's see where I end up. Maybe I'll like hiking and I'll continue as far as I can on the trail. Maybe I'll meet somebody that has other ideas and I can follow what they're doing. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what I thought my plan was, but I pretty much hiked out of New York and then hitchhiked out of New York because, I lasted like a few days before I got tired of hiking. This is before I was really a hiker. Now I feel like I would love to do a trail like that. But back then, I wasn't really a hiker yet. So I did a few days and then I was like, I'm not enjoying this, but I'm free. I don't have a job. I don't have an apartment. I can go anywhere. I can do anything. I have everything I own on my back. So literally anywhere. The world is open. So what am I going to do? And that's when I first hitchhiked and put my thumb out for the first time. And I just kind of went wherever people were going. And I didn't hitchhike the whole way. I also took Amtrak a couple times. Like, I didn't like hitchhiking in some of the bigger cities, like in Chicago. Somebody that picked me up kind of freaked me out. But most places, when you hitchhike, the people that pick you up are really cool. They want to hear about your story, and they usually have a really cool story as well that they want to share. That usually people who pick up hitchhikers are like-minded, and maybe they have also hitchhiked too, and that's why they're doing it. So I just had a blast. I met so many people from different states, and ultimately did end up in Alaska. And I used it must have been Workaway to find a hostel to live and work out of in Alaska. And because I was going to run out of money pretty fast. So I was like, I need to not have to pay for rent and things. And so I posted up at this hostel for a few months. It's called Base Camp Anchorage. And that was a whole other awesome experience. I loved working there. And then while I was there, I would hitchhike around Alaska. I went to Seward one time, and that was cool.
Okay, 2 questions. How do you quit your job? What was the hardest part about that? And second question, how do you hitchhike? And then that sounds like a dumb question, but for folks that have never done it, so 2-prong question. What's the hardest part about quitting the job? What's the barrier to it, or maybe psychologically or whatever?
Yeah.
And then how do you embark safely on a hitchhiking trip?
Quitting that job was the hardest. Since then I've had seasonal jobs in different situations where it's sort of understood that you're not going to be around for a long time, and it might be sad to leave the people, but ultimately, whatever. But this job, I really loved who I worked with. They were, they were family. And I know that is something that every company says, and it's usually not true. And it's usually kind of toxic, but for real this time, to this day, I really love Carly and Dave so much. And so, but I just knew that I didn't love the job itself as much as I loved the people. And it was just hard to tell them. After I did, it was a relief, and I was excited to be moving on to a different chapter. But it was really, really hard to sit down and say, you guys have given me so much of your time and your advice and your wisdom, and, invested in me, and I'm going to leave though. It doesn't feel good, but, everybody has to think about themselves at some point too. You can't stick around for other people. And then I think it was the identity crisis of it set in. That was also really hard. That wasn't really at the exact time of quitting, but maybe over the next 2 years, I really had to untangle myself from that vision of who I thought I was for my whole entire life. And, it didn't happen overnight getting out of that lifestyle. And I feel like a different person now. It's really strange. Hitchhiking, I don't know. I mean, you just try to position yourself somewhere, where cars are going to be able to easily pull over, I guess. I mean, if you're on the side of the highway, they're going 60 miles an hour. They're not going to put the brakes on to pick you up. So you just have to think about location and what's going to be easy for the drivers. And there's not that much you can tell about the person driving from the outside. So, I just try to be open-minded about who pulls over. And usually, like I said, it is somebody cool. So you also don't know how long you're gonna have to wait for that ride. So, usually you'll get somebody within a few minutes, and that's awesome. But every once in a while, the time starts ticking and you start to think to yourself, you have to go through plan B and plan C in your mind. And what am I going to do if nobody stops? Am I going to sleep in these bushes? What's the plan? And, luckily I've never had that, but sometimes you do just have to wait a really long time, and you just have to be patient. But I don't really have too much advice about, you just stand out there and hope for the best. And I guess sometimes people aren't always going exactly to your destination. So you have to be open to rerouting, and maybe somebody can get you half the way, or they can kind of get you off course, but then hopefully the next car can pull back the other way. Yeah.
It sounds like you have to be open to taking a detour.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, hitchhiking's all detours completely. It's very really a straight line. One time it was when I was in Alaska, when we went to Seward, it was me and a girl from the hostel. It took 4 rides to get there, 4 different people. And that was a lot of detours, kind of going different ways before we finally got there. But there was one guy that picked us up and brought us all the way back 2 days later when we were ready to come back. That guy was awesome. And he was very excited to be Alaskan. I think he had maybe moved there. He was maybe not born there. And so he was just pumped to tell us all about Alaska. And he actually pulled over a few times at different pit stops to show us stuff along the way. So he stopped at Portage Glacier. He stopped at, there's this place where they had a spigot in the side of the rock face on the side of the road, and people would pull over and get fresh glacier water. They'd bring a big gallon thermos and fill it up and just drink right out of this spigot. And you don't have to treat the water or anything. And then he took us to his favorite bakery, and it was just great. It was like having a tour guide,
It sounds like having you on the show, and then last week we had Amy Tends to Wander, and in the past we've had like Dancing Pandas and some other folks living this nomadic lifestyle. And I always just shake my head and say, but how do you do that? How do you just walk away? How do you live out of a backpack? And I think hearing you talk, I'm starting to understand that it's just freeing yourself, like being free from the idea that you have to plan your life. And instead it's just experience it, like just let go and let life happen.
Right. Yeah, that's good insight. I would say that is how I look at it. Yeah. I don't know, the second you have your backpack on, I don't know, it does feel very freeing to know that you could go anywhere at that moment, and nobody's going to hold you back. And I don't know, I think part of it too, you do have to have some trust in yourself. You have to understand that if you're going to be going on these detours and you're going to have this type of freedom where you don't always know where you're going to end up, obviously there could be danger in that. So you have to know that you're a smart person and you've done all the research you could possibly do, and you've taken all the precautions you could possibly take, and you've looked up leave no trace principles and, to keep yourself safe from animals even. And once you've done all of that, there's nothing else you can do. So there's no use in dwelling on it or worrying or having fear at that point. You're just not going to have a good time then. There's no point in doing it if you're going to be so anxious that you're not even going to have a good time. You might as well stay at home. So I think I just try to get myself into a mindset of like, I'm a responsible person as much as I can be in this situation. I've done a lot of research and I've prepared. And so now whatever's going to happen is just going to happen. I can't help it. I mean, stuff is always going to happen. So you just got to go with it and trust that if something bad were to happen, that you are a capable enough person to handle it in the right way.
So for those who are listening to you and they think, that's me. I mean, that's me. I need to do that. I got to leave this behind, and I got to go forward in this direction and do this. What would be some of maybe the top 2 or 3 things? I mean, you're obviously talking about ways to prepare, but the challenges to leaving the corporate life, the things you have to think about, maybe the things that surprised you, and you're like, well, you know what? I didn't really think about that being an issue, and it turned out to be. But advice for someone who might want to follow in your footsteps?
I guess, well, and this is kind of very specific as far as things that I didn't really think about that ended up being an issue. When you're hopping jobs, or you're doing seasonal work, or you're taking extended breaks to travel or hitchhike, health insurance becomes an issue. I had like a skin cancer scare at one point during a time where I did not have health insurance. So that was kind of concerning. When you get travel insurance, some medical stuff is included in that. But I guess, you have to think about practical things to some degree, So one of the things that I did at one point, I was working at a hostel so that I wouldn't have to pay rent. But I only had to do 1 shift a week. You would do like a 24-hour shift. And so I had 6 other days. So I also worked at a ski resort so that I could make a little bit of money back, and so that I could have health insurance too. I don't know. I think everybody has a different tolerance level for how much risk they're willing to take. So I would just advise people to, to a certain degree, you do have to take a plunge and cut some things out, and you have to let yourself be uncomfortable. There might be things that you have always thought that you really needed that you don't. But then on the other hand, there's probably some things that really, really are important to you and that you would never want to cut out in any sort of way. Like, for instance, I really like that I have a car. I would never want to sell my car. And a big thing about becoming a nomad or giving up your life or starting over, a lot of the time people say that they sell everything that they own and they only have the backpack. I would never sell my car, because that is also an element of freedom. And it's something that can give me the same feeling that my backpack gives me. But maybe somebody else is more willing to give that up to achieve an extra level of freedom where they're not having to pay for insurance and things like that. So I think people just should self-evaluate and, ask themselves, what am I doing just because it makes me comfortable? And what am I doing because it is actually of value to me, and it is actually something that I care about and wouldn't want to let go of? And try to be as objective as possible when looking at those things.
I know that as part of the Pen Pal group that we talked about in the beginning with the buttons, there's a separate sort of conversation thread around all these folks with these pins and building this community, and talking about also, when you start the nomadic life, about having some sort of home base to get mail and to, to have a point of reference, and for some other reasons too. That just kind of popped into my head as Adam was asking, things to kind of think about. I know that was a big topic of conversation too.
That's something that I'm thinking more about now, because I did have a few years where I didn't have a home base, and that was not important to me. But now COVID has happened, and, having a home base is more important to more people. And it is something that I've been grateful for here in Flagstaff. I mean, I'm glad that I had this apartment this whole time. And I now have a job where I work remotely, and I'm not like self-employed, I'm working for somebody else. And so it is important that I be able to access Wi-Fi and things like that. I have to have those things, at least right now in the job that I have right now. So I'm trying to come up with some sort of hybrid situation where I can travel and work remotely. But then, if you're gone all the time and you're paying rent, that's way too expensive. It makes no sense. So then I was asking the Pen Pals group, what do you guys do if you're full time do you just get rid of your apartment completely? Do you have some kind of home base? How are you guys doing it? And I got a lot of interesting answers. Some people said that they just rent a room, just a cheap, a few $100s a month, a room in somebody else's house. And that's kind of their home base that they can always come back to if they need to. And they can keep their stuff there, and they can have an address so they can vote and things like that. And other people said that they just go all out and they do couch surfing and house sitters. So I got a lot of different answers that helped me out. I haven't totally settled on what I want to do. I mean, now that at least the United States is starting to open back up a little bit, I'm thinking about, can I be a full-time nomad working remotely, as opposed to the seasonal gigs I was doing before, and also have a home base, or do I have to cut that out? I don't know. There's always questions for me too. I haven't totally cracked the code. I think there's just a million ways to do it. I don't know. When you go full time, what are you going to do? Are you going to live out of a RV or?
So I've been pushing to try and do the van camper just to get a feel for what it's like on the road and figuring out, how you just do the day-to-day life. So I haven't even gotten to that step yet. I think that when I go full time, I'll probably have some sort of home base because I've got 2 kids that would be in college at that point. So that we could have that sense of coming home. Although who knows, maybe that's their house and I call that my home base.
There you go.
So, yeah.
Flip it.
Adam would be the person you want to ask that question to.
Tell me. I want to know.
Yeah, I think what I dream about is I like what you said about the vehicle. I could see myself selling everything except the vehicle, and I have a truck that I am very fond of. And also, as you said, I agree with that. There's a sense of freedom in that, also a sense of responsibility. You got to keep it insured and you got to put gas in it and those kinds of things. But being able to go where you want to go when you want to go is worth something. And that would be me. And I would leave out of Atlanta. I would drive down to the border with Mexico. And then I think I would just keep going. I'd go through Central and South America. I would like to take one of those America trips where you basically, well, you know what? Let's go up to Alaska. Let's start up there. You're fond of Alaska. So I'll start in Alaska. I'll drive all the way down to Tierra del Fuego and then drive back. That would be, for me, that would be amazing. That would be the kind of life I would want to live. That would take months, if not a year, to do. And that would be paradise for me.
Would you be working during the trip too, working from the road?
I would. I don't know exactly what I would be doing, right? That we'll see if we can put all those pieces together. But yes, if I had, clearly the idea of perfection for me would be to be able to travel and go and meet all these people and experience the different cultures in the different places and not be tied to a location. I don't mind work. I mean, I'm a fan of work. I'm always doing something. But the concept of work, and you made that transition, and a lot of people have, but the concept of work oftentimes has you stuck to a location and a place you got to stay. And if that can be broken or altered or changed somehow, it opens up freedom for people that love detours. Now, let's talk about your website real quick, the detoureffect.com. What am I going to find when I go there? What's on the website?
So there's some personal stories about some of the experiences that we have talked about, my time in Alaska, excuse me, and hitchhiking. But then I've also, after I worked at the Grand Canyon, that was, there you go. That was one of my seasonal jobs. I worked there for 2 seasons. That's when I got really, really into hiking and backpacking and doing these longer trails. So there's a lot of trail reports, self-guided guides. My Grand Canyon post is pretty extensive about how to plan your trip there. And then when I went to Europe, I did the Carryway in Ireland, and I created a how to do your own self-guided hike of the Kerry Way, which people can download for free. It's like a PDF. And I also did a trail in Slovenia that I wrote a guide about, and that's up for free. And the West Highland Way and different places like that, I don't have guides for yet, but I do have posts about them. And then I've got some collaboration posts with other people, other bloggers that we have this post called must visit small towns in the United States that you've never heard of. And that was so fun because, you know, everybody's always going to write about the same road trip towns. But for this one, we had really interesting submissions that I literally had not heard of some of these places. So it was really fun to work on that with everybody. And yeah, it's kind of all over the place. I have one about, you know, how to protect yourself as a hiker from skin cancer, since that's a personal thing for me. I've got one about about how I turned my truck bed into a camper so that I can start this new working remotely lifestyle. And I plan on updating that to see kind of how it works out and what sort of kinks I work out to be able to live that way. And now I've got the Pin Pals thing up there. And so what I hope to do is include more people's stories, because like I said, I'm just one person. There's plenty of people out there who aren't going to care what I'm doing. But I think the idea of the detour effect, the concept of it, is so much bigger than one person. I think everybody can relate, and everybody has had that experience where you sort of get off track, but then what you find over there is cooler than anything you could have ever planned yourself. So I'm excited I think I'm going to start doing a newsletter now where I can feature people who have the pins and what type of adventures they're going on to, and hear their stories.
That's so cool. I love the whole idea about the community and just bringing people together. You know, that I'm a big fan of that. And then also, again, I'm thinking as you're talking and just feeling so inspired, actually, just hearing your journey and how you approached everything. I think personally, I've been at crossroads at times where I sit there and wonder, okay, what's next? Like, and I told Adam this a couple days ago, like, I feel like there's something next for me, but I don't know what that next is, or if it's big, or if it's small, or what kind of change that is. But it's the idea that there's always something more. There's always, sorry, but I have to do it, more to life, you know, to go back to my Where Gals Wander kind of tagline. So I first just want to say, you know, thank you just for sharing with us your story and how you got there. It's been really great. So.
Well, thanks. No, I appreciate you saying that.
It's an inspiring story, and you tell it very well, which honestly, you know, a person can have a great story, but it's another gift to be able to explain it and convey it. And I can see where you were great at radio and why you're great at the Detour Effect at the detoureffect.com. You and the community, I think that's another thing that I think is very, very strong with what you're doing, letting other people, you know, join you and tell their version of the Detour Effect, right? That your story is one thing, their story is going to be a little different, but that aspect of the detour is metaphorical. I know you know that. You've obviously built this platform on that, but we do hit detours. We have to take detours in life. Some of them are decisions we make. We say, all right, I'm going to do this. I need this. This is a decision I'm going to make. And at other times, the detour is forced upon us. We preferred the road ahead. We liked that. And,
the ultimate
and it's great when things happen, like, you know, what happened with Zan. It made her ready to hitchhike very easily with the thumb out of the cast. And but it's been great. Thank you for taking the time to chat with us. And we do encourage everybody to check out your website at thedetoureffect.com.
Well, thank you so much for having me, guys. This is awesome. I love talking to you.
Yeah, we'll have to have you back sometime, because I know that we've only just scratched the surface. And, you know, Instagram has to try and keep us capped at a certain time limit. But we'll have to have you back and just
We'll have you back, and
it.
we'll talk.
Yeah.
We'll spend the entire time talking about Beaumont, Texas.
That'll take a whole 3 minutes. That'll be a great episode.
Well, then, and we'll have to talk about Orange too. Then just to fill out the rest of the time. So, all right, awesome, Claire. We'll talk soon. Thank you. All the best. We'll be checking out the detoureffect.com and encourage everybody else to do so. Thanks for being a part of the travel tribe.
No, thank you.
Yeah. And thanks for joining us right here on Wander to the Edge.